Mukhija, an international federated player and a chess coach. And today we are going to study the rules of chess. Okay, chess being the most popular indoor game all over the world, and this is an intellectual game which requires your strategic thinking, your imagination, and your calculation skills. There are so many rules in chess which makes the game very complicated sometimes. Today we are going to discuss some basic rules. There are some special rules as well, which I will cover those in the later videos. So this is part one for the beginners, and we will discuss about the chessboard, the chess pieces, and their movements. Let's begin. This is chessboard. You can see here a lot of pieces. These are called chess pieces, or you can say chessmen. Okay, there are a lot of things which we should know about chessboard. For instance, these are squares. The blocks you can see, there are white squares and there are black squares. On this particular board, there are brown color squares. So in general, we can say that we have light squares and dark squares. So there are 64 squares on the chessboard. Half of them are white, half of them are black, or you can say the dark squares. So 32 squares are white, 32 squares are black. And the very first rule of setting up the chessboard is that you should have a white color square on your right hand side. This is the first rule. So you can see on the chessboard, there is a white color square on right hand side. Okay, let us know something more about chessboard. For instance, there are three possible lines on the chessboard. These are the straight lines, the standing ones, the sleeping ones, and the slanting lines. So you can see these standing lines, or you can say the vertical lines, these are called files. The sleeping lines or the horizontal lines are called ranks, and the slanting lines are called diagonals. So we can see there are numbers written on the chessboard and the alphabets are written. Uh, the vertical lines are called files. So we have 8 files from A to H. There are 8 ranks from 1 to 8. And there are so many diagonals on the board. And then we can call every square with its name. For instance, if we talk about this square, which is highlighted, it is on the E file and it is on the 4th rank. So the name of this square will be E4. Okay, we have 6 kind of pieces. The name of the pieces are the king, queen, rook, bishop, knight, pawn. I'm repeating it from left to right: king, queen, rook, bishop, knight, pawn. Each side has 16 pieces: one king, one queen, two rooks, two bishops, two knights, and 8 pawns. Now, how to arrange these pieces? The rooks will come in the corners, then the knights, then bishops, and on these two central squares there will be a king and queen. So this is the important rule here, that white queen will be on white square and black queen will be on black square. And then comes the king. So king will be on opposite color of of its own color. And then we have 8 pawns. Similarly, the rooks, In the corners, we can set the black pieces, the knights, bishops, black queen will be on black, and then the king. And we have 8 pawns on the upper rank. So this is how we can place the chess pieces. Looking at the movement of the pieces, we have different pieces with their different movements. Like if we talk about the rook can go on files and ranks as shown, any number of squares. If any friendly piece in its is coming in its way, for instance, the white pawn is coming in the way of white's rook, then the rook will get blocked. And if the enemy piece is coming in its way, for instance, in this position, the black pawn is coming in the way of rook, so rook can cut the enemy piece and will go on that square. The cut in chess is called capture of the enemy piece. Looking at the bishop, bishop can move diagonally any number of squares, and similar to the rook, it can also be blocked by its own piece, or it can capture the enemy piece. Queen is the combination of rook and bishop. Queen can move along files, along ranks, and along diagonals, any number of squares. And similarly, queen can be blocked by its own piece. It cannot jump over other piece. And it can capture the enemy piece, which is coming in a way. King is the most important piece in chess. King is the strongest piece because the whole army fight for it. But at the same time, king is the weakest piece by its movement. King can only move one square adjacent to it, as shown in the picture. King can go on these possible squares. It's important to notice here that king cannot go on those squares which are under control by enemy piece. For example, in this position, white king cannot go on d5, e5 and f5 because these three squares are under control by black's rook. King can also capture the enemy piece provided it is not supported. In this picture, we can see white's king can capture black's rook because it is unsupported or it is unguarded. But white king cannot capture black knight because it is supported by black's rook. Now we have a very special piece, that is knight. Knight will move like L shape, and knight is the only piece which can jump over other piece. In this position, knight can go on these possible squares. It moves two squares vertically and then one square horizontally, or it can move two squares horizontally and then move one square vertically. When the knight is on the light square, it always go on dark square. And if the knight is on dark square, it will always go on light square. So we can say that knight moves on white square and black squares alternatively. Okay, now we talk about the pawn. Pawn only moves forward. It cannot move backward. From its original place, pawn can move one square or two squares. Depends on the player's choice. But once it has been moved, it cannot move two squares. For instance, the c4 pawn has moved from its original place already, so the c4 pawn can only move one square. The e2 pawn has the choices. It can move to e3 or it can move to e4. The g3 pawn is also being moved, so it can also move only one square. Pawn moves straight on the file, but it captures diagonally one square. This makes the pawn a very interesting piece in chess. So in this position, the white's pawn can capture black's d5 pawn, but it cannot capture the black's e5 pawn. In this position, the e4 pawn can capture the black's rook and black's bishop, but it cannot capture black's knight. So you see, chess is the game of two players. One player is having white color pieces and another player is having black color pieces. The player who has white pieces actually moves first, always. So white moves for always first, and then it goes on turn by turn. So we'll cover some more rules like check, checkmate, how to win the game, the special rules. There are a lot of special rules as well. We'll talk about results as well. So yeah, I hope you find this video very useful. See you in the next video. Bye bye.